Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Danielle, and thanks for hosting this event. And thanks to everyone for being here, so numerous. And thank you to Louisa, and well, first of all, congratulations on the really moving, thought-provoking exhibition, particularly this film that I've seen for about the third time now, and still find new things in it. It's a very dense piece, and quite difficult at points, and that's the relationship between you and your sister's sketchbooks is something that I want to focus on. So we're going to just give everyone a heads up. We have about just over an hour for this conversation, and so there are questions that I will pose to Louisa, so we'll do it as more of a conversation, but then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions as well, because I'm sure that people have things that they would like to ask Louisa. So if at any point, I think this is the nicest way to do it, in the conversation something is touched upon that you would like to ask more about, then please do feel free to, if that's okay with you, to put your hand up so that we can run it as more of a conversation between us rather than you just spectating. And there's also a short interview with Louisa and I, a printed pamphlet downstairs. Thanks, Danielle, for producing that as well. So please do take that away with you. I want to kick off by asking you about your trajectory as an artist, because some people in the room might know your work, your trajectory, and I'm aware that others might not. And this exhibition really makes me think about the kind of direction of travel, the journey that you've been on in the past 10 years, and where you began working with Heta sketchbooks, and why, and how you feel that those sketchbooks have influenced your trajectory as an artist over the years. Sort of elaborate on that for us.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. There's quite a distinct shift in my work at the point after Heta died. So the first body of work that I made with 16mm film was actually after her death, and it came from she died quite a time ago, in 2008. And in the initial period after her death, I really could not. I was struggling with the idea of putting an image into the world, and everything I was doing at the time seemed sort of just didn't seem. I couldn't see the point in it really. And this first body of work that came about after her death, I showed here with Danielle. It was the first time I showed here. And it was a body of work called, under the title of Ground Truth, and it was a piece called Boar Song and a piece called Song of Grief, which were two 16mm film installations. And Song of Grief was absent of image and just had the howl of grief, which Christina's here, we worked together down on the River Severn making those recordings for Song of Grief. And I started working, but first of all I wanted it to be my voice, and I then realised I couldn't, even though I was trying to give voice to something, a sound, a howl that I had in my own head. I couldn't do it until I worked with somebody else and started to instruct them on the sound of this howl, which they eventually achieved. This precise sound, this howl that I felt I'd heard in my head, at the point of being told that somebody I loved so much was now a body. I remember this precise moment and that howl going through my body, through my head, but not actually being able to give voice to it. So Song of Grief emerged by trying to give voice to this howl. And at the same time, Borsong was a work made at the same time, which was a single film loop, which was the length of the film loop was the length of a single take on a Bolex 16mm camera. And it consists of a single as the ball, the 7-ball, tide of the 7-ball passes. And this was wanting this, I worked with before, Nancy Trotton-Andrew, who's the same person I worked with for this piece downstairs. I wanted her to sort of bring to voice a pitch of finality, and I was thinking about the tune, the signal you hear at the end of analog TV late at night. The reason I mentioned these two pieces was because I didn't know whether to say this or not. And Kim said to me, "Is there anything that you don't really want to talk about?" And I said, "But I think I'm going to talk about this." But the reason I sort of arrived at the idea of hanging film was actually I wanted to make beautiful my sister's death. So she had actually hung herself, and so I kind of decided to hang Borsong in the alcove downstairs and hang it exactly at the height of a body, but actually have this very beautiful image of a woman turning into the water. And I'd asked Nancy, the performer, I thought, when you sing this pitch, can you let your voice go with the water, as if this is your last breath, being carried away with the water. So I was trying to sort of make beautiful something, and at the time, strangely, there was no sort of there wasn't a sort of gravestone or any sort of place to go for my sister, and so the River Severn became this place that I was going to repeatedly, over and over and over again, and eventually to make this body of work. So that is how I arrived at making film loop pieces, very, very sort of from work which really was quite different beforehand. And then to go to the sketchbook, really that when I had this exhibition, which I just described with Danielle, I said to her, there is this sketchbook, there are these sketchbooks, and one in particular which I'm holding, which I made this film from. Had sketchbooks which I wasn't aware of when she was alive. I didn't see these when she was alive. And I kind of want to make work from them. And I remember Danielle saying, well, you may be difficult to now, but you may find a way to do this. So what's kind of wonderful is that I've been on this journey making this body of work from this sketchbook with Danielle actually, and through that process discussing sort of the difficulties of doing it and how to do it. And what is okay and what isn't. How do I put this into the world, in such a way that is caring and is right by Heta and that's something that I still kind of constantly question myself. Question how to do this in such a way that is bringing light to these what I think are wonderful drawings. And responding to them and giving voice to them in a way that's helpful.
We talked at lunchtime about ethics and care, and the fact that you're in dialogue with your ongoing dialogue with your sister through these sketchbooks. And you said something that I thought was quite beautiful actually. You said it maybe should be her name on the exhibition as well, because the work that you're making is opening up the space for her as an artist, isn't it? And you were talking about how, because I asked what was her trajectory as an artist, and you said, well, she never really got to that point. And so in terms of care, I think it's something quite beautiful that in the ethics also, we talked about how kind of tricky that must be, but essentially you're allowing her sketchbooks to live on after her death, which I think is quite beautiful. But how do you find your own voice through these images? And as you say, you know, they speak, don't they? They sing. How do you begin to find your own voice with those works as a starting point? How do you even begin to create work that's based on or giving life or voice? Where do you begin? Where do you start?
Well, I think it's. I'm glad you mentioned that fact about whether that question I said at lunch, should this exhibition be in both our names? And because I was looking for a way to show Hetter's drawings. This is what I wanted to do, without sort of taking the book to pieces. How to show these drawings, and so the film, which is kind of nearer the end of the body of work, is a way of showing all these drawings. And actually, I'm not completely sure I finished the film because I'm not sure. I shot it on an incredibly cheap camera, and this is really is a low budget film. And I kind of wonder about refilming it on a better quality camera, so the image quality is better. What I wonder about is whether you can see the words sharply enough. So that's kind of, that's the sort of question whether people think it's clear enough. But it really sort of matters to me that you can see the drawings and are studying the drawings as I'm talking about the drawings.
But I think what's nice is the way that you speak about them. There's such a precise poetry in the way that you interact, and it's almost like a form of interpretation. That you understand the depths of those drawings as well, but you also step back and do a little bit of art criticism, if you like. And I think that you get that balance really, I think you strike the right tone with that. And I feel that is as important as being able to see the precise details of what you're talking about.
I just wanted to say, I think you feel the drawings.
Yeah.
I don't think I need more clarity because it's a combination. You feel it, the vulnerability and the pain, the warmth from.
I also feel that the interpretation is a creative thing. That is like the drawing or do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say? That the interpretation is creative. It is a collaborative thing then that I'm getting. The imagination of your speech about the images is really creative and poetic along with the images. That's what I'm just saying. Maybe not.
I agree, Sarah. I don't think there's anything you need to redo with that film personally. I think it holds so beautifully as a piece of work that I just don't touch it. It's really very, very, very more than fine as it is. Yeah, it works. Yeah.
There's a rawness to, even when you're talking about the so-called cheap equipment, it's the rawness of the equipment that brings it. It allows the visceral effects of your body to speak as well. Why would you want to use high equipment? You know what I mean? The rawness of the mechanics, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's also giving it to memory, to that. There's a reciprocal, there's a dialogue that you're having with her and the book and the thoughts and yourself. So you're also having a dialogue with the time where the so-called mechanics, that is so like cheap mechanics that you're referring to, it's not, it's raw, and it's really quite, sorry, I'm like really overwhelmed because I think it's an incredible piece of work. And it just speaks it. You don't need to make it clear, because if you want to see it clear, people will ask or will go in deeper and watch it over and over again.
And I think the public here, you know, people feel blame.
Because also I think, and also as a viewer, there's a sense of, there's an intimacy there that is a little bit discomforting, because we feel as a viewer we don't have the same relationship as you, so we're being invited into a world that's slightly uncomfortable, and so I think that we sort of need that distance. and we need you to guide us through it. So actually I find, even more so watching it in this setting now, that your voice and the musicality of your voice and the poetry of your voice and the things that you say really helped me through that process. And so I think, and also we talked about the way that you recorded it, and that also adds the texture to it. Can you say something about the recording?
Yeah. So I mean, before I mention the recording, I actually did want to mention Adam Roberts, and the reason was it really helped me, this conversation. It was during lockdown, and there was a conversation between Adam Roberts and Gareth Evans, and Adam Roberts was talking about his work, the Stuart Croft Archive, and he was talking about looking so slowly and carefully at every page and the sort of weight of the pen on the paper, and even how sometimes the pen would slightly tear into the paper. And it just kind of helped me, because it was like, yes, this is what I need to do, because I have been wanting to make this film for a long time. This is what I need to do. I need to go back really slowly, looking at each page, really slowly. And so what I did was the film is made after the piece is completed as a soundtrack. So as I kind of always work primarily with sound, with all this recording work I've made, it's all kind of stems from sound and often voice. I work with, first of all, writing in detail in this book, just writing and drawing out. So sort of drawing the pages, and by drawing the pages, I was really looking at details, making myself really look at each page. And I thought, because I've been working with this sketchbook for a number of years now, making performances, choral performances or expanded films with choirs and projectors, singing these each a drawing at a time, because I've been making this body of work, I've almost stopped really looking at the drawings. So I wanted to go back and just turn the pages very, very slowly and look very, very slowly at them. So I started by doing that and writing about each page as I was turning the page, and spending as long as I could on the sort of, on the absolutes, as I said, sort of from the marks that you wouldn't normally pay attention to, the thing like the fact that the string goes off the edge of the page here, and the fact that there's these little black marks here, which are from left from the marks on the other page, and the sort of bumpiness to this page because of the materials on other pages that are more, and so really looking at it in detail. And once I'd finished this I then wrote this up in essay form, and at a certain point I thought it was a piece of writing. And then I thought, well, okay, I've got this body of music that I've made during lockdown, which was a sort of lockdown thing, but I started making digital music in lockdown, which was kind of completely not something I'd done before. And I worked with this archive of recordings that I've made over time with collaborators. So I had these vocalizations of people saying, "What shall can people see me swallowing? Oh God!" I had all these vocalizations that came from which I'd used for previous more sculptural works or choral works, and then sort of started to thread them into the timeline. And then I had a very, very cheap microphone. Okay? So I had a microphone that I bought off eBay that's actually which was part of, it's really bizarre, but it's part of you get, you used to see cars with horns on them, and people going, whatever. This microphone is part of this kit, and you have to speak into it like that to get a recording. So I kind of wanted this kind of intimacy. So I am talking like this, and you can hear my breath, and I kind of kept with it. And then I was like, should I go and record this properly? No, I'm just going to keep this. So I'm sitting with turning the pages of this book and speaking into a microphone like that. So kind of keeping an intimacy to the work.
Is that because was that a conscious artistic decision to work with that device, or did that just happen to be the thing that you had to hand?
It was the thing I had to hand, and then I did actually, to be fair, I did actually go into, there's a recording studio, Music Works in Gloucester, and I did go in there, and I did do a proper recording. And then I just thought, no, this has completely killed it. This is, I'm just going to stick with this very sort of, crude recording.
Textured,
textured.
Textured. I think it has. I mean, in the film, you talk about the textures of the pages. I mean, obviously, we're distanced from that because we don't have the book in our hands, but you manage to convey a sense of the materiality of the object by talking about things like the effect of one page sitting next to another. And were you trying to obviously, part of the answer to that is yes, but to what extent was it important for you that the viewer understands the materiality of the object? And did you find any challenges in that? I can't articulate well enough the materiality of the object.
I feel like, I mean, if anything, I think I could go back and for further work sort of actually just spend longer with each drawing. I mean, I think I hope that I have tried to. I mean, that was a question about whether to refilm it, and possibly the next stage is actually just thinking about where to go next. Is maybe in terms of caring for this archive, this sketchbook and these sketchbooks, what do I do next? And the work, I have a queue of works I want to make from this. So I kind of, but I also think possibly before they wear further, and there's little things like this has come away from the front of the page now, and I've just washed my hands, so I'm kind of careful to kind of try and keep it as clean as possible, but to maybe take some just colour photographs of each of the pages open. So I'm documenting this now. That's important to me, finding a way that people actually see these drawings. Because I think as objects and as drawings, they're just so wonderful, the way they rise from the page and the way they use materials. And you said they're very sculptural, and they're sort of assemblages. And this one here that I've got open has got butcher's twine wound round and round the page, and then these little. This is the drawing that I made downstairs, the film installation. Feel stupid as it takes as a starting point. This drawing here responds to this drawing. So on this drawing, little, as I described it in the film, scrappy joints of rolled up newspaper, and on there these little torn pieces of masking tape, and they're sort of coming away from the centre. It's like it's almost like a torrent, a maelstrom, the way this is spiraling round and round and round, and written on these masking tape, on the piece of masking tape, the phrases, what shall I do? Discomfort, how to stand, how to walk, feel stupid. Why do they make me feel this way?
Can you tell us about the process of writing in relation to this film? Because I think am I right in thinking that it's the first film where you extensively use your own voice?
Yeah.
Which seems to me, we talked about it in the interview we did for the exhibition, but it seems to me a different direction in your work. Can you talk to us a bit more about the process of writing? Because you said that you wrote on each page, you wrote about it in your own notebook. How did that then move from your notebook to what comes across as an incredibly fluid set of reflections on the sketchbook? What did that take a long time, or was it a fairly easy process? Because it is a new device for you, so...
I love writing. I'm more comfortable writing than talking, actually. I think I kind of... and so I think I'm sort of starting to sort of try and think about how I make the second essay film, which I kind of want to make on the subject of psychosis. And I think this provides a template for where I can go next, how I continue to work. I think the writing process, I think it works particularly with my spoken voice, actually. And I didn't really, I did edit it slightly, but not too much. I didn't do much to it really. It's kind of a sort of just written in draft form in a notebook and then edited as I write it on the computer. And then I guess it gets a further edit once I've recorded my voice for little bits that I cut out. But other than that, it's pretty sort of straightforward process.
Okay, so it's a process that came quite easy for you then.
Yeah, it did actually. I enjoyed the process, and I wanted to make a single screen film for a long time. So that's exciting to make something which is a single screen film. Yeah,
Because that's actually what you were doing some time ago.
Yes.
Yeah. Work that you were making before that. Yeah. It's quite that much time. Your voice has such a musicality. Over the years, you've talked to me about works that you have in progress. Often you sing, as you have done to us now. And I've always thought, wow, you must have studied music, or talk to us about that. Where does your interest in music come from, and what's your? Have you always been interested in? Do you sing? You should sing.
No, I joined a singing group recently. I actually can't sing.
Tell me that.
I quickly discovered I can't actually sing. I can sing my own works. It's kind of limited to that. I can sing this sketchbook. It really evolved from sort of just quickly returning to song and grief and Boar Song. When I showed them together, someone said to me, "That's really interesting. They come together in a minor sixth interval. This is really interesting music." This is a complete kind of accident that I arrived at this musicality, and that was the sort of catalyst for thinking, well, I can work with multiple loops musically. I can actually start to do work with it takes a conscious decision to consider what happens with multiple loops. And the interesting thing you have, because all the loops are different length, you've got this constant sort of variation in terms of what is heard together. It's been quite intuitive. I kind of started working a while ago with a composer called Glover, and he lets go at a certain point and what I do with the work. He's kind of but this was after Boar Song and Song Grief, so we worked together on Cathy Equals Silver Swallow, the way we worked with that. So there's two pieces to talk to about musicality. One is, I think, Awkward Relaxed, which was performed by two choristers in the stairwell here. Maybe I'll talk about that first, actually. But so as we're here, so for the show in 2014, Awkward Relaxed is, and I will show you the drawing. So here it is. There's a little pebble suspended from sellotape on a thread, and following, as it written in the trajectory, in the arc of its trajectory, are the words awkward, relaxed, awkward, relaxed, and the pebble swings like a pendulum. And so we worked with, we had two choristers here, which was really incredible, and one was at the top of the stairwell, and the other was at the bottom of the stairwell, and one intoned the words around about that pitch, and the other intoned the word relaxed, and they had their eyes closed, and both were imagining a pendulum swinging through the stairwell. And when it reached them, they would sing or incant their word again. And this did a quite interesting thing, that sometimes you did awkward, relaxed, and other times you did awkward, relaxed being sung together.
So it was improvised in relation to how they were imagining.
It would set the rhythm, so the mental image set the rhythm. And so this is how we work with the drawings as a school. And that piece lasted 10 minutes, and I've never performed that again actually. And then Can People See Me Swallowing was made around about the same time. And again, this was made in collaboration with Richard Glover. And this time, the site was the cavernous back stairwell at Spike Island. And I sort of thought about that as like the sort of throat of the building, this huge cavernous stairwell. And we had, looking at this piece, drawing, so this is the drawing here, and it has laminate stuck across the page, which almost feels like it's suffocating the drawing. And under there is a thread that winds round and round and round and round. And written in the centre is, Can People See Me Swallowing? And then in the loops around the edge, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. And so we thought, well, the thread could be interpreted as a drone. So we asked the singer to sing a drone at the lowest pitch that she could. I forgot to breathe. You have to breathe and do the arm. I think she could do it. And then we asked, the instructions were very simple, to sing Oh God at the highest possible pitch. And when we asked her to sing it again, of course, it's microtonally different from the other Oh God. So the three distinct incantations of Oh God are microtonally parts. So when you hear them together, I'm missing a step. I need to explain how this becomes film. I'm going to jump to the Can People See Me Swallowing. Can People See Me Swallowing? The instruction to her was to sing it somewhere between the high pitch and somewhere to the low pitch. So it was really simple instructions. And to sing Can People See Me Swallowing at the end of an out-breath. So we're kind of thinking of ways, we just didn't want it to perform anxiety or anything like that, but instead to think about ways of how, through physical means, to alter and bring a tremor to the voice. Mm-hmm. So she sung Can People See Me Swallowing at the end of an out-breath. And then these recordings were put onto 16mm film. So we had one long black film with an imageless film that wound around the stairwell, which had the drone. And then at the top were films which were black and then cut to light at the point of the vocalization, which had the vocalization, oh God, which meant essentially you had these beams of light that would be projected in sync with the voice. And so at the top of the stairwell are three projectors projecting and singing, oh God, at the highest pitch. And then at the very bottom of the stairwell is a loop that would go travelled up through the floors from the very base with this single incantation of Can People See Me Swallowing? So they were made around the same time, one for choristers and the other for, and in fact, Can People See Me Swallowing also, I asked, also had a choir perform that using similar instructions. So there's some instructional pieces. Mm-hmm. They stem from responding to these drawings as scores and then delivering instructions, and then the instructions being performed by singers.
Taking the spatiality of the drawings and making them sculptural.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And finding a way to give voice to drawings which are already, they are just lending themselves to be voiced. They are full of these handwritten words that, and so just to voice them and vocalise them and incant them.
And your use of choristers in that respect, do you see that as directly, is that the form that these drawings, that these pieces take for you, that really embodies the way that you hear those pieces?
Well, choristers are just less trained. It's basically working with classically trained singers. That's what I've really enjoyed doing. Mm-hmm. So working with those choristers, they exactly hit that pitch. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, I think they really got involved working with the mental image of the pendulum, and were sort of, they almost, you could have knocked them over at the end. They were so kind of immersed in the mental image. So, but they are, I think I've really enjoyed working with classical John Sims choristers. And then the singer who I've worked with on all the works downstairs, the vinyl, dub plate vinyl, and the 16mm film loops, is a singer called Samuel Middleton, who was also a chorister previously.
So your work is really about collaboration on multiple levels, isn't it? Have you ever made work that hasn't been a collaboration with some?
Well, Little Fools was that. This was a very solitary process, sitting at home at the computer, and it came out of lockdown, not being able to. My projectors were in storage, my collaborators were miles away, so it came about working. It was a much more solitary process.
But still in collaboration with Hector?
Yes, Kim, yes, absolutely. I think that's to keep, thank you for saying that, to keep that collaboration at the heart of the work is very important, and just to keep thinking how would Hector feel about this. And she is my collaborator.
Absolutely.
Did Hector sing?
No, Hector didn't sing either.
Not at all.
No.
I have more things that I want to ask you, but maybe we could open it up so that people have the opportunity, and then I can go back to some other questions.
I just was really struck by the relationship between image and text, and kind of a homage that a close reading is of someone's work, and the beauty of that image, and then also how it relates to audio description in film. You can't see. So there was something very interesting to me. I found myself closing my eyes actually when I was watching the film. So it's sort of when you're then looking at people closing their eyes and they make the sound. And so rather than making the image a little more clear, sometimes I wanted the image to go away because what you're saying was evoking the image so strongly and so beautifully that it sort of gave me a different kind of intensity in relation to what I was seeing.
Okay, well that is interesting because it was completed as a soundtrack before I made the film.
I thought it was a really interesting fact.
So I listened to that and turned the pages and tune just in sync with kind of what I'd made before. So I did that. At one point, it wasn't going to be a film.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but counter to that, I'm very keen for her drawings to be seen.
Yeah.
So how I do that is.
I think it's really beautiful, but as a viewer, you kind of encounter that sort of, and especially with the song, which then takes you into another space. So you're sort of going within these different spaces that are not the same space. And I think that's really wonderful. So it's like they're given freedom, the words are given freedom through the song. It's beautiful.
It's a question really about the intensity of this, really stunning, affected piece, and where you think is there a space where you have in mind the spectator, so this far away or much closer, or the spectator can move between being far away and being closer, because of course you can't read the text from here, no matter how kind of clear it would be. Maybe someone will get glasses, but obviously if you could read the text kind of closer up, or perhaps you could read the text closer up, or you could read the images with more intensity closer up, whereas you're looking at the double page. So there's different depending on when the spectator is, a different emphasis of what you're seeing of the image and how you experience that alongside the sound. Does that make sense? So where do you see do you have a place where you think the spectator should be set, or is it up to the spectator to make that decision themselves?
I think the thing that I really was concerned about was that people watch it beginning to end. So I've been really determined that people don't wander in and out again, and actually go on that journey through the book. And I think that being sort of seated with people as much as possible, I think that's my the only sort of premise of the
No,
work.
yeah.
I don't like the idea of it being on a loop, people just...
No, so you do, so in that sense you see it sort of more, as a piece of cinema than a
Yes.
sort of installation. Right, yes, that's
Yeah,
really key.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand that. I think it's absolutely right. It's actually really, so you were saying about the, I think it was, well, one of you were saying about the proscenium arch that we're actually watching, which is sort of beautiful framing.
Yeah, it's interesting in relation to the gallery, in relation to that question, screening it in a gallery alongside other works. Is there another place for this film outside of a gallery where it's in dialogue? I mean, do you see it as a piece that could independently travel and be screened? I mean, a lot of short films end up being screened alongside other short films in a curated programme, whereas this has a particular position here, which I think works really well. What do you want for this?
It was interesting because when I finished it, I mean, I was really pleased just to show a very intimate way. Here, it felt like a very safe place to sort of tentatively put the film out into the world. So I kind of was worried. I worried about a lot of things, about whether I was conveying Petter in the right light. Was it all right to convey the troubles? And was that helpful? So all of those concerns first of all. But I think now, with a little bit of time, I've really let go and I'm sort of more relaxed about it being shown again. Yeah.
Is it somewhere that you would? I mean, of course, when one sends a work out to a film festival, one doesn't always have any say over what other film will be placed alongside it. So I feel like, in terms of care, I wonder, how do you feel about that? Because I guess you could send it to a festival and have no idea what film would be sitting on either side.
Yeah.
With that, I mean, that was a different.
I don't know, it's a balance, it's a
isn't it?
balancing act, isn't it? Because it's kind of, I do now think I would like it to be shown. That's but the conditions are sensitive.
Yeah.
It's kind of crucial. Vicky?
It's something about, and do you mind if I talk about the downstairs piece
Oh, yeah,
in relation
please
to
do.
this one?
Yeah.
Which is, and the woman that spoke about it being like audio description, because I shut my eyes as well, and for some of it, for your reading of the sketchbook, and because you make it tangible and visual, and then just thinking about where the optimum audience viewpoint is, or because you think about the piece downstairs, you see material everywhere, and so you can see the sources of the sound and the image, but it's hard to know exactly where one should be in order to get the sweet spot or whatever it is. And I feel there's something about that in your sketchbook piece as well. It's like, where does it actually exist in a way, if that's not too, because to me it sort of exists as a mental image.
This sketchbook film.
Yeah, because it was very vivid when I shut my eyes. So that's animated through your words in a way, because maybe a bit like Helen, I couldn't really see the images that well, but I didn't need to, because you sort of animated it. So maybe it's not a question. But
Yeah, so what's going downstairs? Oh,
Sarah, do you want to
It's
respond?
only just an addition, because we're all, it's kind of beautiful, we all see things differently. I really enjoyed both. I did feel a sort of, not a struggle, but a difference, something like that. But I really enjoyed both, because I could then feel the different voices, subjectivity of your sister and you and that together. And actually, because I've been interested anyway on issues of interpretation as a creative thing, and that is what's happening in a way that the voice is creating images in tandem to the images. So to collapse the idea of a separation of critic and artist, or that actually it's a combining there and joining, and as well as between you and your sister, just those ideas of interpreting image. You don't have word in image, you have image in image, through sound and through word, and it's a flow then of interpret and creating. A creative interpretation, an interpretation that is creating in some sense, or joining. It's a mix, and I thought that was really unusual and really lovely, because it was also about just creativity and marks that are textures, that are also sounds, also words, and there's a level of abstraction there. And there's this joining of image, abstraction, word, image, sound, and two people, one here, one not, but intimately and intrinsically sort of connected, and so the subjectivities are reforming and becoming. It's just sort of, I enjoyed that.
There's an openness to it.
There's an openness, and that's the great thing also.
That it opens outwards, and there's multiple ways in and multiple positions.
But it's also very distinct as well, and defined.
I wonder if that goes back to what Vicky was saying about positionality, where one positions oneself in relation to the moves downstairs. In terms of what Sarah was saying about there being multiple spaces to occupy and a sense of openness. I mean, going back to Vicky, I think the question that Vicky was asking was that where would the spectator be? Is there a sweet spot? And I guess what Sarah's picking up on is that there are multiple angles, multiple perspectives.
Yeah. So I think with the piece downstairs, sort of make the conscious decision to keep the room light enough that you can move around the space and you can experience it all around. And each film group has a different soundtrack, so it does alter depending on where you're in the room. And as each film group has a different duration, different length, that soundtrack is constantly changing. The two pieces downstairs, each independently respond to one of the drawings in the book. So the first one, as you enter, human interaction, there's a photograph on the wall of my hands holding the sketchbook over me, and on the page you see the feather pressed under laminate, and written along the spine of the feather the words human interaction, human interaction, human interaction, human interaction. And pressed onto vinyl is a vocal piece, which is made very simply with a singer and a tape loop encircling the room, and the singer is singing the words human and then interaction at separate places until it builds up, and so you have layers and layers of human interaction. And that's builds up over 90 minutes. Eventually you start hearing the sort of overtones, and that piece was recorded at the same time. That was considered in relation to the next door piece. So the pictures of human interaction are considered in relation to Feel Stupid. So the two were made at the same time, so we're in conversation with each other. Feel Stupid, I think it departs from some ways from other works that I've made from the sketchbook, in the sense that I filmed the images when I was actually really unwell myself, and a lot of me started going into this work, so it feels like it's more of a conversation between her and me, and I feel like the sound of the images maybe is a sort of sonic pool of distress, and kind of really letting go of some of the formality of earlier works and actually allowing this to become quite sonically kind of almost messy.
Can you talk to us about the process of making the images in that piece? Because I realise we haven't really spoken about that.
Yeah. So I worked with performing the same before Nancy Trotton Andrew, who I worked with on Warsaw. And together we were exploring gestures of how the body manifests anxiety, how the embodiment of anxiety. And some of the images were sort of informed by my own sort of experience at the time. It was kind of one of those questions of something you don't want to talk about, Louisa. Well, I think I will talk about it. But I was biting my hand, and my hand is still slightly swollen in this film from this biting. I was biting my hand compulsively when I was experiencing extreme anxiety. And the extreme anxiety I was experiencing was caused by what I thought was going on in the world, which wasn't going on at all. So things like the colour of people's clothing to even dear Danielle's art newsletters became extremely distressing. The language and the colours of clothes and the sounds of the world all kind of took on different meanings. And so I actually made that work, started making that work when I was experiencing this. And so quite a lot of me started going into that work as well, which is a sort of marked difference between early works, which really were just responding to the page. So, and Nancy was also she was also working with a close friend of hers who suffers from extreme distress, exploring these different ways in which the body holds distress. So that's kind of what we were doing with those images. And so I think that it's a film that really is a little bit different from previous works, and also a little bit different in terms of, for a while, the works I was making from the sketchbook were imageless, and I boldly put images in this film.
You were working with a flashlight.
And I was working with a flashlight. Sorry, thank you so much for saying that. That's quite crucial. So I actually filmed Nancy in the dark. So I was filming in the dark, and I had a conical, antique conical flash gun, which just would illuminate a few frames at a time. So just to capture these moments. So what you're seeing in those images is the image coming into focus from darkness and then going back out again, which is why it's sort of they shift over time. But of course, when you flash a flash gun, it only lasts for a fraction of a second. So I then went through this lengthy process where I went down to Kim's lab in Aberystwyth, where they've got she's got an optical printer, and I re-photographed these tiny 7 frames and stretched them out so they'd last 2 to 3 seconds. So you had these glimpses of these moments.
Did you know that you were, when you were making that work, did you have a sense that you would have to do that in order to make those images visible? Or was it actually afterwards where you realised it's too fast, yes, I need to do something?
It was too fast. Yeah, I realised this really was not perceptive. And I did think about working with slowed down projectors. So I went through a number of courses about how to work with this. And then I made this very exactly, counting exact frames when I was doing the optical printing to make those loops exactly the right duration for the space downstairs. There's a kind of a madness to it, really.
Can I just say that that's something I've shared recently with some editing I've been cheating and doing digitally. So there's this whole question of what I call a glimpse. And I had to go through the process of doing it, but it was much quicker digitally, of actually sort of manipulating clips and then cutting them down so that you just got a glimpse. And it was interesting, you sort of said you wanted 1 to 2 seconds. And I'm going, no, I don't want that much. I only needed to be about 6 frames, between 6 and 12 frames. So it was between a quarter and a half a second that I needed to put in mind to give the potential for a glimpse. Interesting. Which is interesting that you've been exploring something in a completely different way.
Yeah.
go back to the equipment used, how old was the equipment used for the film? I understand this was a long time. No, the equipment used, because I was just wondering, because you wanted to redo, you've been thinking about redoing the film to make the lettering
just to make the
speak a bit
to crisper,
hard.
to make the page
Yeah.
crisper, yeah.
So when was what was the equipment
Well,
used?
I went to I went to Stroud Valley's photography, and he has a darkroom. He has in his darkroom a copy stand with a camera,
Yeah.
and it's a sort of £500 digital camera, and it sort of shoots for 20 minutes, and then you have to press start again.
But see, what I really
it's done in a very simple way.
Yeah, but what I quite like is the idea that it's contemporaneous to the book, which is kind of
So the
gorgeous.
temporality of the sketchbooks,
Yeah.
and when the sketchbooks would have been made, the fact that you're using an older technology to
Yeah.
film it.
There's a romance in that, I think.
Yeah. Can I just say something about what Vicky was saying in conjunction, but also I want to add something, and I'm going to see if I can articulate it as well as best. Originally I was thinking about it, effectual trilogue, and then the image of a pendulum, the way you were describing it. It reminded me of José Gil, who was a Portuguese philosopher, and he would often describe affect, the way dancers, when they dance, they spread their bodies, and so they're affecting the entire space. So it's very much like the pendulum, going back to the image in the film and the sound. You can't really control the affect it has on people because there's so many spectral layers, both physical, visceral, and spectral. It's like a pendulum. It's the affect of the space, like a dancer that takes up. I mean, the dancer will spread like this, but then it'll spread further because of the transmission and the transition of affect that spreads within the molecular structures of the space, if you will. I don't know if that made any sense, but I was trying to articulate that. Do you know what I mean?
I was thinking about that also in relation to the technology, and it's making me think about the technologies of affect.
Absolutely.
And how we relate certain obsolete technologies or older technologies with the grain and the
there's a disintegration, right?
Yeah,
and there's an absolute and it's like video V8. The video 8 camera, the cassettes or high 8s, there's a disintegration from the way one edits, you're from a switcher, from tape to tape, and then you're breaking down the part, the metal inside. You're stretching it, and there's a definite affect, it spreads, and it's incredibly beautiful. I find it old technology. I mean, I'm not talking about film, I'm talking about video. The way it breaks down, and the way it can really communicate a lot more visceral than if you were to use like a 1,000-pound camera, if you will.
And also, the way you use the internal speakers of the 16mm projectors, ordinarily somebody would put a jack out, wouldn't they? Or have a whole mixing desk, which is how people normally take the sound out of the 16mm projector. But by using the internal speaker, it makes it much more intimate. And you've described the projectors as singing, and it's true. Then the projector has a voice rather than it being a soundtrack.
Absolutely.
The projectors become embodied.
Yeah.
And that seems to link with your idea of using this cheap mic.
Absolutely.
It's more intimate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it does the job. And the materials in your sister's sketchbook are rough and not expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a particular interest in the materialities of technology, don't you? There's virtually never a kind of cleanness. There's always some material wanting to take up some space. I think that's one of the things that I find quite striking about your work. the materiality of it, the viscerality of it, and the way that.
I kind of like the fact that you have to sort of get down low and put your head against those projectors to hear them.
Vicky actually did.
We did, yeah, great.
Is that all right?
Yeah, great. I'm glad you did. That's exactly what I want. Yeah, people do. Yeah, yeah.
It's
And then the process, the process of making them is again made with tape loops. So there's no, I'm really strict about not wanting to sort of edit digitally my 16mm soundtracks, but them to be made really simply with these tape loops going round and round and round. And I kind of wanted in that process to kind of bury the intonations, which kind of does happen. They get really buried and muddy in that process. And so that's just repeating those phrases over and over again onto tape loops that I made cut exactly to the right duration for the film loops.
What, sorry, I didn't give you much chance there today. What's next, Louisa? Is it okay to ask you?
Yeah, wow. I want to sort of make it quickly while I've got the momentums there, So there are sort of three things actually, I think. Going back to Hetter's sketchbook, I just love these drawings that I haven't got to. I've started to think about how to work with, but how to work with this amazing the drawings which are like Venn diagrams with these little circles and bigger circles, and circles overlapping. Self-confidence, 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 self-belief, self-esteem, self-consciousness, self-consciousness. And I'm sort of, I'm thinking this both has the possibility of being a choral piece with singers, but also with a few projectors. I'm not seeing any images with this at the moment. I'm just really interested in just voicing this piece.
It's very Kabbalistic and Sephirot.
What's that?
It's very Kabbalistic in the Sephirot, the diagrams of the I don't know how to describe it other than using Hebrew words, but you know how the have you ever seen the diagrams of the Kabbalah? So there's the cheseds in the Qatar, so you have like a circle over here, and then it connects to these two circles, but then it connects into the middle circle, and then each circle identifies each individual, but also communicates with it. So the chesed is like the charity, but it's not charity in the Christian sense. And the Qatar is like where the mind is, but it expands into the sun. So there's all these communications, and it just, I don't know, the way you were talking about it, these circles, it just reminisces the Kabbalah.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
Do you want to feedback,
No.
Louisa? Because just thinking about what came first in a way. As long as I've known you, you've worked with loops, and then there's these film loops, and then there's the sound loops, and then there's these circles and Venn diagrams in Hetter's sketchbook. Were you working with loops before the sketchbook? Or?
No. Well, that All Song or Song Read for the first film loops. I wasn't working with loops before Hetter's death. But it seems to be there's a parallel between her departure and these film loops. I kind of would like to work with Why Me, Why Not You as well, and then the other film, which sort of goes back in a sense. Vicky, it leaves the other thing I want to do is departs from loops, but is to make this film, to attempt to make this film about psychosis, which I feel like kind of starting to know what the soundtrack's going to do, so it's being led by sound. There's quite a lot of music I made, which in the midst of madness, which I kind of want to repurpose really. I think that could be a starting point for making this film. But I don't think I want to make it all about me. But I think the thread of what I experienced is going to run through that film. So I think it's going to be very difficult to make it actually. But I think when I that's kind of what I want to push towards now. But I definitely don't want to stop making these works
Based on
based on the sketchbook. I just feel like there's a body of work still to be made with this.
I hope that someone writes a book about you.
That wouldn't be you, Kim.
And your work and process. I think it's fascinating. Final question. The glass screens that you use downstairs and that you also used in Warsaw.
Yes.
What's that? Where do they come from? What's the fascination with that material? Those particular dimensions?
Okay, so the process. The first time I showed Borson, I actually had a different sort of piece of glass. So at the same time as I was making that body of work, I had good friends who were glass artists who invited me to kind of just explore projecting onto all these different sorts of glass. And so that initial piece of glass that Borson was made on was I hand sanded. So I basically worked in their workshop sanding all the edges of the piece. And what happened, because that was sanded on both sides, Borson seems to sit within the glass. I mean, that's a kind of really extraordinary thing, that it's kind of really held within the glass.
Yeah.
And then with this piece, I kind of thought, do I want to just let projectors project into the space, or do I want to find ways to have these very small little screens? And so it's arriving in a way where I just sanded one side to create these little screens. And the scale, I guess
There's an intimacy to
Yeah.
it. Like Vicky was saying, that there's a tendency in film installation to make things kind of big and spectacular. And it's almost like you're going the other way and making
I was going to make them even smaller.
Right.
Actually, I had little tiny bits of glass which are about this size that I was going to project onto. So at one point they were going to be even smaller. So I think I kind of like the fact that actually talking. I mean, maybe that goes back to what Helen said about how you want the spectator to interact with the work. I did really imagine the spectator getting down to put their ears to the projectors and sort of going on to sort of crouching down to watch the imagery.
But we made actually from both sides because then that's a show, which were different from both sides.
Yeah, it is.
Just that's also what important that work.
Yeah, the glass it's doing something different. The glass this time. Yeah.
But it works the scale of the glass works with the intimacy of the subject matter of the piece, the gestures, and that sense of tension. It kind of feels like it needs to be drawn back and brought in and made quite focused, small.
What she knew holding had a sketchbook and talking about that glass downstairs. I think they've got quite a similar scale.
Yes, that's interesting. Yeah. Yes,
I think it's very interesting, just thinking about what you were saying about body and affect, is that the huge difference that you're downstairs, the spectator's not even the right word, because you have to move into positions to see and hear the fullness of the work. So you're very bodily aware. Particularly if you've got dodgy knees or something, I'd be even more aware. But it's whereas up here, it's like, I don't believe it that you kind of lose your sense of embodiment when you're a cinema spectator, but there is that sense where you're sitting and it's a more cerebral and engaged kind of position. So it's just that's kind of interesting in terms of the more active and kind of passive. I think that's too simplistic, but you sort of get it.
But it affects you visceral regardless, right? Yeah. I mean, it's cognitive, but it's also like, for me, I like Vicky. There was a couple of moments, just very slim moments. I closed my eyes, but I went in, like I wasn't here. I was in the sketchbook, but I was also in your book. But I was also feeling a lot, so it's very visceral as well.
Downstairs?
No, here as well, downstairs. Absolutely. It's what Helen was saying. It's very, it's very spectral downstairs. It's also very grounding because of the projectors. This is what we're talking about. Here, it's all of the above. There's so many layers. that one, you know, there might not even be enough language or words to describe the physical and the psychic and the emotional and the visceral dynamics of the piece, right? And mediumship wise as well, right? Because you feel Helen as well. I mean, I did, right? So there's a definite feeling with you as you're working with her, because she's with you all the time and she's also here. Do you know what I mean? Sorry.
Do you feel that with Hector? Because you talked very early on, it's a wider question, or not really a question, but, you know, a thought. You know, it is difficult working with someone who can't say, I like that, or I don't like that.
Wow, yeah, it's a really big question, isn't it?
I know, I'm sorry.
No,
it's right at the end. It's something like...
It's the big question,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
How would she say, well, actually, that's perishable.
Yeah.
I don't want that. I don't know. I kind of was really concerned. That does concern me. And I added a line into our afterwards, into our conversation in the leaflet, saying just about Hetta being a dynamic and vibrant person. She was a very funny person.
Yes.
And I kind of, you know, so it concerns me that I'm not just dwelling on the darkness. And I think the thing is about performances like Awkward Relax is that it was a very uplifting experience. And there's another performance we did called I Wish I Could Be a Stone. And she made this drawing, which isn't in this sketchbook, it's in another book, where a little bit like John Cage's, is it Ryoki? Was that right? Where he's drawing around stones.
Okay.
She's drawn around stones, and she's actually added a little sort of horizon line on the ship, and written in each stone is I wish I could be a stone, I wish I could be a stone.
Oh, there's an
I
Annie
wish I could be a
Dillard
stone.
book, Teaching a Stone to Talk.
Oh, really?
Essays. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
I'll send you.
Yes,
yeah,
please
I'll send
do,
you something, yeah.
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 So with this piece, I got, this is the same period where I was working with the choristers, and we got two choristers down with the help of Sue Jones at Whitstable United, we got two choristers down to the beach at Whitstable, and we had them sitting close to the edge of the water, and they had one microphone kind of here. That was really important, that it was really close to the mouth and quite breathy again, and really bodily. And another microphone was pointing out towards, along close to where their hands would be and towards the water, so you could hear the sound. So it was like a field recording. You could hear the water coming in onto the shingle and then going out again. And they were holding photocopies of the drawing, and we sort of invited them to perform it like it's a game. I said, right, if you like a game, what you want me to do is look at the drawing, find a stone, and then look amongst the pebbles, and find a stone amongst the pebbles that's like the pebble in the drawing, and then hold it in your hand and sing, I wish I could be a stone, and then drop the pebble again, so you could hear the hands through the shingle, you could hear the stone being picked up and then it being dropped at the end. And the two choristers had two distinct pitches, so there's a very nice interval again with the two pitches. But that was did that answer it? Did I just go off the tangent?
No, but that speaks to a cheerier episode.
Yes, that was it. So I think with these works, they're kind of vibrant and transformative, I hope.
To defend yourself, Louisa, I'm going to do it for you, okay? You would not be able to do this work if you were not sensitive. So you would know intuitively if she was not happy. Do you know what I mean? You would know, you would feel it. So, like, just trust yourself that she would, I really believe that, that you would know, you trust your intuition as you're working. Right, you're a sensitive woman, and therefore you wouldn't be able to do this work because without that an enormous amount of sensitivity. Trust that she would be totally happy with it.
Yeah, I do feel,
right?
I do actually feel
like
that she would be okay with this.
Beyond.
And I did say to Kim at lunch, should this exhibition be in both our names? Should
There's a respect, and there's an absolute respect,
And it feels like you're making her work relevant to yourself, so words
Absolutely.
like thinking about self-confidence, self-esteem, and they're things we should all be considering.
Absolutely.
But it feels like you're foregrounding that and thinking in terms of your own processes.
But also, we all exist in our own previous interpretations of this, and some of those interpretations are more accurate or more caring and kind than others. So who better than you to interpret better? Because we all have that, you know, we have people we prefer to be with because they shine us back in a way we like ourselves more. So I think that, dead or alive, that happens. We're not just ourselves, and we exist with the people around us. So,
and the detail which you go into when you're describing the sketchbook just shows how much care you've got, and it's really catching it.
Well, I genuinely think they're very important drawings, and that's another next step. Is kind of, as I said, whether it's a series of photographs, how I document these again.
They're also touching on quite universal themes too. That they speak so broadly. You know, they're not about. Well, they are about an individual's experience, but I think they can help to open up some wider awareness of how difficult it is to be a human being in this world. They're really valuable for that reason.
It's like the images. It's like the images are full of pain and self-harm and other factors, but the sound isn't. I mean, Nina's phone rang at some point, and it was somebody screaming, and I thought, but there's not painful sounds in Louisa's work. It's all quite harmonious and melodic, but the images are. That's where the pain is.
And I think this book was made. One thing is I think it's a reflection on illness, but I think it's made on the cusp of her starting to. I think it's made around the edges of illness. I mean, when she was hospitalised, she was for long periods, she wouldn't have been able to make the sketch with in hospital. She was sort of zombified by medication. But when she was really having a great time, she also wouldn't have made this book at that time. So I think it's made around the edges of illness in a way. But as you say, touching universal things.
Yeah. I feel like that's a nice place to